What we're going to do today is called sighting, and it deals with what's called comparative measurements. We're going to compare the measurements of one object to another object. So if I have my blank paper here, I'm trying to figure out how to start this drawing. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is figure out the proportions of each object in relationship to each other. So it's going to make the objects fuzzy. Sorry about that. But right now what I'm doing is I'm kind of pinching the one object. So I'm taking the measurement of the sphere here in the middle, or in the front. Okay, so with my fingers I'm getting that measurement, and so now I'm keeping that measurement. I'm not going to change anything. My elbow is kind of locked, and now I'm going to slide it over to this, and I'm going to see how many spheres high is the cylinder. So this is this, and then 1, 2, 3.5. Okay, so as I start my drawing, I know that the cylinder is going to be, or 2.5, sorry, 3.5, 2.5 spheres high. The other thing I'm going to check real quick, this is a circle, so I know the width and the height should be the same. But what about compared to the width of this? So how wide is this ball compared to the cylinder? This should be a little bit wider than that. That should be a little skinnier. Okay, so now I know it's going to be 2.5. As I start my drawing, this is what not to do. Sometimes people think that I'm doing this, getting this measurement and then putting it right here. Okay, that would mean on my drawing that that ball is very, very tiny. Okay, so I'm not going to fill up the whole space. I want to fill up the whole space. I want to make these objects as big as possible. So that's not going to happen. But what I am going to do is I am going to pick one of the two objects. So I can either draw the ball first, or I can draw the cylinder first. It's totally personal preference. If I start with the ball first, I can kind of guess how big it is, but the one thing I have to watch out for is I can't make the ball this big. Sorry, I can't make the ball this big because otherwise I'm going to run out of room. So before I draw the ball, I should make sure that, you know, I kind of just guess, say, here, let's try and make the ball this big. Okay. So now, do I have two, at least, do I have at least 3 of that height? Yes. So I can make this sphere this big to start with. Okay. A general good rule of thumb is give yourself like an inch of a border around so that you don't accidentally cut things off and run out of room. You want a little bit of space for your eye to breathe. So if I'm starting to draw then, okay, I can make this ball, let's say about this high. You notice when I'm making a sphere, remember those light sketchy marks? I am not making one perfect one. I go around a few times, and somewhere in there I actually ended up with like a decent, you know, even ball shape. I can do this and check and make sure that my width and height are the same. So now that I have this on the paper, I'm going to now figure out how tall to make the sphere. So one thing we need to talk about real quickly, see how part of the cylinder disappears behind the ball. The two objects are overlapping from where I'm standing, right? So I need to figure out where does the cylinder kind of go. And I'm kind of eyeballing it a little bit, but it looks right about halfway is about where it's hitting. So right here, if I kind of do this, I can kind of figure out like that that's probably about where the cylinder is going to start. Okay, so if I know that's where it's going to start, I can get this measurement, 1, 2.5. It's going to be about right there. Okay, I can double check it. I think I kind of took that measurement, that top one, and I think I actually like this bottom measurement better. So this is going to be more right here. So these are all exploratory marks. I'm not making it perfect. I'm going to end up erasing this top one, this top mark. This is a little bit more of where the ball shape kind of evolved. And I kind of like it right there. So this is going to be the top of that. I'll erase those marks. Okay, so this will be the top of my cylinder-ish here. So now remember we need to kind of think about like what was the width of it. So the width was just a little bit less. So as I do this, I'm going to do less than this. But now, where does it overlap? Right here. Okay. kind of think, like, is that about the right amount? And if I want to be real precise, I can measure it, but it's going to be, it's not all the way to the middle. I can kind of see where the midpoint is, so it's just shy of middle. So if I want to be real precise, I can figure out like where the midpoint of this is. This is the middle. Okay, so maybe a little bit more right there. Okay. If I do that, I know this is too far, so now this cylinder is going to be just a little bit in. Okay, so then I kind of fill it in. Once again, these are just initial marks. Okay, so right now the ball looks way too big, you can kind of see, because I have a lot of those extra marks going on. Okay, when I kind of refine this, and then I can kind of still say, like, all right, if this is more of the, this is a little bit more where the ball is going to be here. This is more of my actual 1, 2.5. So I can kind of, I can add to it because I left myself plenty of room here. So I can make that a little bit bigger. Okay. The other thing is maybe I made it too fat. Maybe it needs to be skinnier. You know, I'll make those adjustments. But that's the basic idea of how to get something like that with the right proportions. And, you know, it still needs a little bit more refining. Not perfect on it because I made some extra marks here. Once I get the ball a little bit smaller to where it's actually not all these extra marks, it'll look a little bit more. Okay? All right. Hang with me just another minute, because let's say I was doing these same objects, but now let's say I was doing this. And this is my perspective. Okay? I won't go through the whole drawing part again with you. But also now, are the proportions the same in relationship to each other? They've changed. So now this is less than 2. Okay? So you got to kind of think about, like, you know, depending on where objects are in relation to each other. If I do it now, this, they're about equal. Okay? So it's kind of a good lesson in perspective. You know, this and this, if you just sat down and drew the objects without really thinking about their proportions, when they actually are right next to each other, right, 1, 2.5, like we kind of started, those are how they are. But your brain is going to tell you, okay, you need to make the ball a third, or, you know, 2.5. But if you're drawing it this way, nope. You have to measure and check out those proportions. If you're setting your composition up this way, your proportions are drastically different than the first one. All right, we'll touch on that more during the live session. We will go over this a little bit, and I'll be able to field some questions, you know, and see how you guys are doing with this concept too. Okay? All right, practice this, and we'll get on to the next thing.